I was mid-sentence on the radio when everything died, just a pop-a hiss, and then silence so deep it rang in my ears. 1 second I was talking to a storm spotter in Texas, and the next my rig went black. The smell of ozone hung in the air sharp and wrong. I knew it wasn't random. Equipment doesn't die that cleanly unless someone helps it along. When I stepped outside, coffee still in my hand, I saw her Mara Pierce cutting across my side yard with pruning shears gleaming in the sun. She was in her 40s, perfect posture, bobbed hair, HOA president written all over her face. She looked like she'd walked straight out of a real estate brochure, except for the part where she was standing over my freshly cut cables like she'd just taken down an enemy. "This is a violation," she said, chin lifted like I was some criminal. I stared at the limp cord swinging from my siding. "You know that's a federal crime, right?" I said. She didn't even blink. "This neighborhood has rules," she said. Then she smiled tight, rehearsed the kind of smile that hides arrogance behind civility. That was the moment I realized I wasn't dealing with reason. I was dealing with control. Now, I'm not a guy who yells. I've spent enough years fixing things that blow up when you rush them. So I powered everything down, took a breath, and did the most effective thing I could. I filed a report. Quiet documentation beats loud outrage every time. By noon, though, the gossip machine of Sycamore Ridge was already in overdrive. My neighbor Duke came over shaking his head. "She's at the pool bragging she cut your spy cables," he said, half laughing. "Something about you reporting us to China." I wanted to laugh too, but the pit in my stomach told me this wasn't going to blow over. People like Mara mistake fear for leadership, and fear spreads faster than fact. 2 days later, black SUVs rolled into our cul-de-sac like a movie scene. Doors opened, agents stepped out, calm and polite, credentials flashing. They asked to see my setup, and I led them out back. When they saw the clean snip in my line, they exchanged that look like they already knew. Mara drifted closer, pretending to trim hedges while eavesdropping. One agent turned to her and asked, "Ma'am, did you tamper with this resident's communications equipment?" Her face shifted through every shade of denial. Shock, offense, righteousness, but she couldn't hide the truth. She crossed her arms. "Those lines violate HOA covenants," she said, as if bylaws outrank federal law. The agent's reply was flat as stone. "Ma'am, cutting federally licensed communications lines is a federal offense." For a moment I thought she might faint. They didn't cuff her. This wasn't that kind of scene, but the warning was clear. The neighborhood held its breath for days after that. You'd think that would have been enough for her to stop. I did too. I was wrong. 3 mornings later, I found a stapled packet on my porch: Emergency Community Safety Directive. The title screamed paranoia. My antenna was now labeled a health hazard. I had 7 days to remove it or face escalating penalties. I almost laughed. Then I started photographing everything. Because when someone builds a bonfire of lies, you don't argue, you document where the flames start. By lunchtime, the HOA group chat was melting down. People claimed my radio was making baby monitors babble, garage doors open on their own, even pacemakers misfire. I wanted to type a paragraph starting with, "That's not how radio frequencies work," but I didn't. Arguing with Mara online is like throwing a meatball sub into a fan. It just paints the room. Instead, I called my buddy Cal, who runs emergency nets with me. He told me what he always says: log everything and breathe. So I did. That night I came home to find orange utility flags zigzagging across my lawn. Some crew had been requested by the HOA to check for unauthorized underground lines. My cables are above ground. It was intimidation, plain and simple. A deputy showed up that weekend over a noise complaint, also from Mara. He looked embarrassed just asking. I showed him my logs, decibel levels, timestamps. "You're fine," he said, glancing toward her house. "We'll mark it closed." She was standing there in her driveway, arms crossed, that smug look that said, "This isn't over." And she was right. It wasn't. A few nights later, my signal got jammed. Not static, not interference, deliberate jamming. Every time I keyed up, the line filled with bursts of noise. Someone was targeting me. I filed another report. When the agents came back, they didn't even knock, they drove straight to her house. I watched from my porch as they held up a handheld spectrum analyzer, the little screen lighting up like a neon arrow signal coming from inside her home. They didn't arrest her, but they told her what would happen if it continued. The look she gave me over her shoulder could have stripped paint. I thought that was the end. It was just the start of a new phase. The next morning there was a plywood sign hammered into my lawn. My lawn. It said danger, illegal radio station, hazard to health. She'd driven the stake so deep it tore my grass. 2 hours later I got an email from concerned residents drafted like a lawyer's letter demanding I dismantle my station for the safety of the community. I printed it and took it to the emergency HOA meeting Mara called that week. The room felt half town hall, half courtroom. She stood at the front with a slideshow about radiation plumes and signal bleed, waving to a man beside her, a licensed communications consultant. My address glowed on the screen, circled in red. The crowd murmured like someone had said cancer. When it was my turn, I stood up calm as I could. "Everything you've heard is false," I said. "My station is federally licensed. Agents have already investigated. The only illegal device they found didn't belong to me." I didn't mention the video I had of her sneaking along my fence at 2 a.m. with a tape measure and flashlight. I didn't need to. The room started shifting, people looking at her. Not me. She snapped, "He's fabricating evidence." Her voice cracked. The consultant closed his laptop, and that was it. The moment her authority started to wobble. That night, someone pried open my exterior breaker panel and flipped my power off. Not an accident. I called the sheriff. This deputy didn't smile or shrug. He took photos, asked questions, promised a detective follow-up. By dawn, the neighborhood felt different, tired. Like people had finally realized this was more than a petty HOA feud. It was obsession. The agents told me to keep operating my station like normal. Consistency helps us see the noise, one said. So I did. 2 nights later, my guy wires were cut. The tower leaned like a boxer trying not to drop. The camera caught a blur, hoodie, sneakers, fast. No face. But I didn't need one. I made coffee at 3 a.m., sat in the glow of my shack, and waited. When paranoia replaces peace, every creak sounds like a threat. Mara vanished from the street for a bit, but not from the internet. She resurfaced under a new username, posting about government oppression and secret towers. She called herself a patriot. She called me an enemy. Then came the inspectors. 2 men in polos showed up at my door claiming to be private safety contractors retained by the HOA. I filmed them, told them to leave. They did, but one of them stared right into my camera before walking off like he wanted me to know he'd remember my face. That night, a drone hovered over my yard for 10 full minutes, buzzing like a mosquito. Then my phone buzzed too, a text from an unknown number, a photo of me from above with the words, "Still watching." I saved it. Just another page in the strangest scrapbook of my life. The agents told me to stay calm, to keep transmitting. So I did. A few weeks later, they picked up a strange burst on a restricted band, the kind of signal that says, "Look here." Their vans rolled in again, equipment scanning, antennas twitching. The source A rental 2 houses down from Mara's. They went in and came out carrying high-power transmitters, heat-scarred racks, a laptop still plugged in, and a man I'd never seen before in handcuffs. Turns out he used to be a licensed operator. Lost it years ago. Never got over it. I knew Mara had her fingerprints somewhere on it, but she was gone that morning. Her social media went dark, her house silent. The board sent out a bland newsletter about approved mulch types. 3 quiet days passed. Duke came over with a 6-pack and sat on my steps. "Maybe that's that," he said. I shook my head. "I've never seen her take a hint." "Maybe she'll take a warrant," he joked. We both knew better. She didn't take either. Her new posts painted me as part of a conspiracy, some grand plot to silence concerned homeowners. I ignored it. Then one night a voice broke into my frequency. Male, calm, saying my name like a dare. "You think you're safe?" Then silence. My stomach dropped. That wasn't incompetence. That was intent. 2 nights later, my backyard cameras caught 3 figures climbing over my fence, human silhouettes moving too carefully to be kids. They carried a duffel moved straight for the base of my antenna. One pulled out cutters, another carried a canister. I didn't run out there. I called 911. Then I called the agent whose number I never saved under his real name. The response was fast, too fast to be coincidence. They'd been waiting. The yard lit up in red and blue. Flashlights slashed across the grass. 2 of them didn't make it to the fence. The third almost did until the porch light hit her face. Mara. Even then she tried to stand tall, chin high, voice trembling. "I'm protecting my community," she said to no one who cared. They read her rights while half the neighborhood watched from their driveways, phones up, little blue record lights blinking like fireflies. I stood on my porch, coffee gone cold in my hand, heart pounding steady now, not from fear, but from something heavier, relief. The kind that doesn't feel like victory, just quiet exhaustion. By noon the next day, a local reporter was parked by my mailbox. The headline that night read, "HOA President Arrested for Tampering with Federal Communications." The board released a statement about respecting federal law, the so-called consultant she'd hired. He showed up later in a mugshot too, part of the same setup. The rental house got cleared out full of gear that turned misdemeanors into felonies. Neighbors started waving again, shy smiles like they were remembering I was a person, not a storyline. I didn't say much. I just rebuilt what she'd tried to tear down. My tower stood straight again, wires taut, paint nicked, but still standing. That night I keyed the mic and checked in with the storm net. Familiar voices came through, people I'd never met but trusted more than most neighbors. "Heard you had some excitement," one said. "You holding up?" "Yeah," I said, glancing at my steady signal at the calm street outside. "Rig's solid, logs are clean, coffee's hot." "Then you're better than most," he said, and we rolled into small talk about the next storm front like nothing had ever happened. You know, I've thought about what winning means in a story like this. Truth is, I didn't win. I just didn't lose the way she wanted me to. Power without accountability is just theater, loud, righteous, and flimsy. Real authority doesn't need volume. The calmest voice in the room, the one with patience and receipts, usually writes the last paragraph.